So they could fight,
Yeah.
literally, and be okay straight after. But they could probably take each other to a place that no one else had with the manager. If he played well, we won. There was like Sergio, David, Carlos, unreal. And I remember David played a game at Anfield, was outrageous, and we lost 3-2. That would never happen with Yaya.
So would it be fair to say that when Roberto Mancini left, a lot of players were happy to see the back of him?
Oh yeah. Yeah, more than what he's documented.
Hi, I'm Jeff Stelling and this is Football's Greatest. Each week I'll be sitting down with a legend to discuss and debate some of the best exponents of the beautiful game. The players that got you off your seat, the hard men that made you wince, and the moments that will stay with you for life. Manchester City's 2012 Premier League title win is considered by many to be the best there's ever been. They were 8 points behind Manchester United with just 6 games left, but they overhauled them thanks to that Sergio Aguero injury time winner against QPR. Joleon Lescott was part of that Manchester City squad, and he's with us today to talk about that and his time on the blue half of Manchester. So Joleon, 93-20, it's a time that was etched on every City's fans' memory. Just take you back just 3 minutes 20, if you like. What were you thinking going into extra time, injury time in that game, knowing you needed to score 2 goals?
Oh yeah, I wasn't as optimistic then as obviously when you get the equaliser. But yeah, I was just thinking, I don't want to leave this summer. It was the Euros, summer of the Euros. I'm thinking, I don't want to go. I'm like, I don't want to leave the house. I don't want to go and collect the kids from school. Obviously, having played a part in their first goal. But even at that time, I was like, oh, we'll score. It will be fine. And then they score a second and it's like, oh, now it's real. But yeah, I wasn't aware of the time, to be honest. And I wasn't aware of how late Edin Dzeko's goal was until years after. But yeah, it's as glamorous as we can speak now. It wasn't for a long period of time. And even now, I still wouldn't want to win it that way.
Yeah. It's the forgotten goal, actually, isn't it? The Edin Dzeko Cup, because it's the one that nobody talks about anymore.
And it was like 91st minute. I assumed that was like 85, and then Sergio's was obviously the last minute, but no, they were both pretty late.
So when Edin scored, you still thought,
it's time.
Somewhere in your mind, there's time.
Oh yeah, because I just assumed it was like early, and yeah, I'm glad I didn't, because if I was aware how late it was, then it probably wouldn't have. Yeah, I would have been a lot more nervous about it.
So what were your memories of that Aguero goal then?
The goal, again, my memories are better now because I've seen it, but before I'd seen it, and I didn't watch it for a while.
How many times have you seen it?
Not as many as you think.
No?
Jeff. Yeah, for years I couldn't watch that. And even now, it's still goosebumps. And people, when I explain that, people think it's because of my contribution to their goal, but it's not. It's just the whole occasion. And I think COVID, I don't know if it was yourself, we did something on Sky, and it was me, Vinny, Micah and Zaba. We were kind of reminiscing over the game, and we'd never really spoke about it. And then we was all on there together, and it was like we were all equally as nervous, and we knew the outcome of the game. But yeah, I remember the following season, one of the first games away was Newcastle, and I got to the hotel and I put the TV on, and the game was on. I turned it off straight away, and after that I never put the TV on in any away hotel.
Wow.
Yeah.
So on the day, how did you see it? What were your recollections of it?
Oh, yeah, again, just remember Nigel picking up the ball in passing it forward, and obviously recognising now, after seeing it, it's one of the few times Sergio comes short to receive. He goes in behind, he obviously passed into Mario. And I remember that part. That's the bit I actually remember from the game, was Mario receiving it, passing it to Sergio, and then Sergio doing exactly what he was born to do in this exact position he was born to do it.
Wow. So where were you in the pylon afterwards? Were you on the bottom level?
No, I wasn't. I didn't make it over there. I was drained. So obviously I was left side centre back. So I was near the dugout. So you just try to grab someone. And obviously at this point, everyone's forward. So there wasn't many City players around me. So I literally looked to the left and seen the staff. And obviously everybody knows that plays football. There's so many staff that don't get the recognition and they spend probably more hours than the players, getting the players ready and prep. So like all the physios and the medical team, they run on. And I remember he was, Robin he's quite small, but I was just making him aware that I was going to jump on him, not he was jumping on me, and I just smothered him, and then other staff members came and we was just hugging, and yeah, it was emotional.
Yeah. What were the celebrations like?
A week long.
Were they really?
So yeah, they were good. No, we, again, obviously, in greatest respect to the club, that they wasn't used to the success they have now, so it was probably different to what they do now. Everyone was involved, every member of staff, and we had the town hall booked, and it was just all there. And again, you got to see everyone that had contributed to that point. But yeah, it was a good time.
I want to talk about some of the characters who are in that Manchester City squad in a moment. But I also want to talk about some of the characters in the Queen's Park Rangers squad, because there were so many, interwoven plots, if you like. The fact that Mark Hughes was managing them, the fact they had, I think, 3 ex-City players playing, and the fact,
and
Nedum, Sean, and Joey.
Yeah.
And obviously there was the Joey Barton moment, wasn't there? What are your recollections of that? Because you were one of the few people that he didn't try and take out.
Yeah, to be fair, I've really been a fan. Don't know him that well, but I was just aware that he was trying to obviously wind people up. And I'm quite placid anyway, but on the pitch that was never going to be a thing. I'm not for the handbag side of the game. If it's real, then the game's going to win, then we can address it in the tunnel. But yeah, he obviously did that and tried to get people sent off, and thankfully our lads didn't bite. They played their part, and Joey Barton was exited off the pitch by Micah. And even that, now I'm thinking, Micah was sub. He came on and shepherded him off. Obviously, they know each other. And just even that alone, like that wouldn't be allowed now, would it? Like subs can't come on the pitch and get the opposition player off who's been sent off. So yeah, there were so many crazy circumstances to that game. It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I think he'd elbowed Carlos Tevez, hadn't he? Then he kicked Sergio Aguero.
Yeah, I think he'd elbowed Carlos, then he kneed Sergio or vice versa.
And then he tried to headbutt Vincent Kompany.
Yeah, which was a dangerous thing to do. Vinny, you don't headbutt Vinny. But yeah, in regards to what he was doing, he was obviously trying to take bodies with him, but he underestimated the want for us to win rather than just the reaction and the emotional element to it. Like, we were determined to win that game, so yeah, there wasn't going to be a reaction from... Maybe if he'd done Nigel, there might have been. Maybe, yeah. But in regards to the lads he chose, nah.
I remember Paul Merson, who was doing a sock special with him that day, and his description was, he said, it's like a scene from Platoon out there. There are bodies everywhere, And it was like that because Joey seemed absolutely determined, that he was going to take everybody with him. And he's, hindsight's impossible, but you do just wonder if history would have been different if he kept his head and stayed on the field. Yeah,
but again, I probably would have got sent off under different circumstances. He was obviously wound up to a certain point, and his intent was to do that. No one had provoked him. He wasn't targeted throughout the game. The fans weren't booing him. So his approach to come into that game must have been to, if I'm going down, when I'm going down swinging.
Now, thanks for watching Football's Greatest on YouTube. But can I ask you please to hit that subscribe button? That way you won't miss any of our future episodes, and we have some great guests coming up on the show. The miracle, really, of winning the title, it wasn't just about that day, was it? It wasn't just about the 6-1, at Old Trafford either. It started way back in April, and you were, 8 points adrift, something like that? And you won 6 on the bounce. 8 points adrift, you must have thought, this is done and dusted, we're going to be runners up at best.
Yeah, again, you're not anticipating United dropping them that many points. That was like the business end of the season, and they historically had gone on and done what they did best at that time. So, yeah, we were just making it more challenging. That's all we were trying to do. And like I said, we had a great start to that season, and then we fell off around January. They obviously did what they do and picked up, and then all of a sudden, I think it was the Wigan game, they drew or lost. They drew to Everton at home and lost to Wigan in the space of a week, and that was like the switch. And then we knew that if we now win our games, having still to play them, we were going to be in control.
Yeah. So you've won 6 on the bounce. you've won the league from an absolutely impossible position. Now, I want to know how you've managed to win the league with a squad with so many strong characters. I don't think I've ever seen a squad with so many strong characters in it. I mean, what was the dressing room like?
No, it was good fun, and we were all together. And the beauty of it was, as much as they are strong characters, the motivation to win was overrided everything. And they wasn't the versions of the personalities you know now. So let me give you an example. Like Vinny. Vinny wasn't the Vinny that ended his career, because Vinny came in and Carlos was the captain. Then it was Colo. We had Patrick Vieira. We had Yaya. We had David Silva, who played in the World Cup final. We had Nigel, who'd played with Vinny for years. So there was different elements. We had Gareth Barry, who'd been a club captain for 10, 15 years. So we already had so many leaders. So the responsibility on all of us was different. Like I said, mine was just to participate in that role. Micah's was the same, and Gail then come, and then we added Samir. So as much as we had like personalities, they all understood their roles, and we all understood that if the spine of the team, which was like Joe Hart, Vinny, Yaya, David and Sergio, if they got it right on the day, we were going to be very difficult to beat, because we all knew we could contribute, but them guys were like top.
Who though were they? Because looking from an outsider, and you look at characters, and obviously you think Yaya Toure and Mario Balotelli, Nigel de Jong, Samir Nasri when he was. Who were the voices that were most heard in the dressing room?
Different at different times. Again, there was so much respect. So if Carlos and Gareth Barry ever spoke, you listened, because they didn't speak that much, but they led by example. They were always available, always gave 100%. So when they needed to address the group, then you listened to that. And then it was standards. So whether it was me, Millie, Edin, at Colour Off, that just continued to train the way we played, and just set that standard, because the likes of Yaya and Sergio didn't train the way they played. They was able to turn up on a Saturday and be the best players and win the games, but
so they weren't great trainers.
They weren't. No, they just didn't train the way they played on a Saturday, which is understandable, because if you're at that level, it's probably hard to do that 6-7 times a week. But the level they sit on a Saturday allowed them to do that. So we understood, again, we just understood how important we were at different times, and said we were in and out the team over the course of all of our times there, and we knew that we just wanted the best for the players that were playing. So it wasn't a case of everyone down to tools or everyone's kind of disregarded if you're not in a team. It was like, no, you still have a voice and you're still important.
Yeah. Let's talk about one or two of them, and of course the name that everybody will bring to mind straight away is going to be Mario Balotelli, who, got the assist for the Aguero goal, which again, I think
his only assist.
Sorry?
I think it was his only assist. Yeah, his only Premier League assist.
So what was he like to have around?
Good fun. And again, fairly judged, because I don't think people realise he was 20, 21.
Yeah.
And he was moving country for a lot of money, and to a club that was being scrutinised for various reasons. And again, it must have been a lot for him to deal with as a personality, as an individual. But in terms of talent, I think he would admit now that he didn't fulfil his potential on the talent level he had, because there were days in games as well, but more so training, that we're like, Mario, why are you not doing this every week? You know what I mean? Because if you do, then no one can undo you. But
would he be up there in the sort of top echelons of players in terms of talent that you've seen?
He would be very close, but what people don't appreciate is the mentality that super talented players have. Is not just, like I said, to do it once or twice in a couple of games out of 10. It's like, no, every day, every time it's needed, every big occasion, they want to be the guy and want to be the player. So I think there was that aspect of it, and having seen him and spoke to him since that, he's aware that he could have lent on more senior pros to do that, but with less talent, and just pick them brains and say, well, how do you maintain your level, regardless of what that talent level is, but how do you maintain your standards? And but again, we have to consider that he was 20, 21, and you're still learning yourself, never mind going to a different country and a language.
Yeah, I think it was the It was the 6-1 at Man United, wasn't it, when he first unveiled the "Why Always Me" shirt? Were you aware that was going to happen?
We were aware that something was coming. And what's funny is, what I give him credit for, is that he wasn't wearing that like multiple games before. It was literally that game. Chappie, the kit man, had made it for him, and warned him not to take it off, because if you take off your shirt, you get booked. But if you just pull it over your head, you don't receive a yellow. And we couldn't trust Mario not to get a second yellow. So we just said, if you're going to do it the way he did it. And he just pulled it over his head and just became iconic.
Yeah. Did the lads like it at the time?
Yeah. Listen, whatever he did, we kind of took with a pinch of salt because it was Mario. But again, there was times when he could have been a bit more serious. And he probably would have helped him along the way. But his contribution was as important as anyone else's.
Were you at his house when he's letting fireworks off?
No. I never got the invite. But it's like I've recently done that as well, hasn't he? In the change rooms, I think I've seen on social media. But he hasn't learnt his lesson. But I never got the invite.
I read that he had his car impounded 27 times in his time there.
Yeah, probably. He I think one of them was he came, and I think the first day he got it, or he got it sent over, he crushed it. He didn't realise we drove on the wrong side of the road, which again is... Yeah, he's understandable. 20-year-old kid not realising. And then I think the funniest was when he turned up with a camouflage wrap over his car.
That was incredible. I remember seeing the pictures.
Yeah, that was Mario.
Did he get some stick for that?
Nah, because it was Mario and he owned it. That's the thing. He did it as much as he played up to it. He was aware, but he would do that, and he was consistent with that aspect of it. So we had to accept that's what comes with Mario.
He didn't always see eye to eye with Roberto Mancini, though.
No, but that was... See, that's funny. That's your take, but they were so close. They was like father and son. Yeah. So they could fight. Yeah. Literally, and be okay straight after. But they could probably take each other to a place that no one else had with the manager. Yeah, they would love each other, fight like... Not father and son, because I never fought my dad like that, but like brothers or even like husband and wife kind of thing. But they had a lot of respect for each other, I think.
What did they fight over?
Everything and anything. So the two I can remember, one was Mario got sent off in a European game. We were 1-0 down after the first leg. We came back, and I think it was Dynamo Kiev at home. He got sent off in the first half, and he went into the change rooms, and the manager followed him in. So the manager just left the dugout. Again, this wouldn't happen nowadays. He followed him in during the game, and they had each other by the scruff of the neck in the changing room whilst the game's going on. So that was one. Then there was another one. I think the pictures have been documented of them on the training pitch. And to be fair, that was Mancini was in the right then. Mario was upset with something, and he'd fouled a player, and he was a young player, and the manager had said, like, you wouldn't do that to Yaya, you wouldn't do that to Sergio, so don't do it to him, and literally just grabbed him and said, go in. But Mario didn't retaliate in any way, but I think that was the day Mancini realised how strong Mario was. He's trying to move him, and he's just stood there like an iron statue. He just can't move him. But yeah, as I said, it was never kind of a fight to where Mario would be so disrespectful. The kind of the angle was through love, and you could see that. I remember I was injured, and what did he say? He said to someone that he doesn't want to select me because he thinks my calves are too small. I was just like, what?
Greatest rollicking received, Joleon?
Glenn Hoddle. Maybe cry.
How did you get on with Roberto Mancini? Because there are a lot of stories come out that, he was difficult, he was aloof. You told us about the Balotelli stuff. He had that sort of public falling out with Carlos Tevez, didn't he? And I read the quotes about when he said he'd like to punch Sami Nasri because he wasn't consistent enough. So he's obviously a complex character. How did you get on with him? Not great.
Better now, probably. We're both more mature and obviously... past Man City days, but we recognised that obviously we played a part in each other's careers. That was always there. But in terms of me at the time, he came, and like I said, I'd come from Everton and a mentality of this. Yeah, you think he was my first foreign manager, so understanding how they work as well was new for me. The training load changed, which then all of a sudden I started to pick up injuries. So I prided myself on my professionalism, which was important to me, and being available. And then all of a sudden I'm missing games and through things that were avoidable. So I went to speak to him a few times, and he didn't see where I was coming from due to my age. It was like, well, you're 28, 29, you should be able to do these things. I was like, yeah, but it's important for me to be available for my whole career, not just the next like week or so, in regards to what he wanted to change and restructure. And it took a bit of time for us to get on to where it was hindering some of his more important players. The training method started to hinder them and affect them. And then it was like, oh, okay, I need to let them adjust their training program. So then it was like, well, if you're letting them do it, then I need to do it as well. So we would go back and forth a lot. But again, my motivation wasn't Mancini in the greatest respect. It was just to play football and play for Manchester City. So you just get on with it. But overall, probably not my fondest manager in terms of our relationship, but my most successful. So I have to respect that.
What were the training sessions like? What were the issues there?
Yeah, just long. And as I said, it was just kind of consistently hindrance to the mechanics of what I've been used to. And said I had a knee injury that I'd managed and I'd been consistently fit for. I hadn't missed a game in like 5 years. And then all of a sudden you want to come and make the sessions an hour longer, which is then obviously more load. And over the course of a week, it feels like an extra day's training and stuff. And we're getting floodlights at the training ground and we're there longer. And it's just like, it may work in Italy in the greatest respect because the game's totally different. And I think he learned after the first season that was the case. It was like, oh, the intensity is a little bit different here. So I kind of have to manage the players a little bit more different. And when he started to recognise that was beneficial to us, he kind of reverted back to what we were used to. So it helped a lot more of us.
I'm going to go off at a tangent for a second, because you said he wasn't your favourite manager. Who was?
Glenn Hoddle.
Was he?
Yeah, not even close. Like, I don't know if it was just at the stage of my career, the age I was, but how he spoke, and even now when I listen to him and work with him, how he speaks about the game, I just understand it with so much clarity. He showed me details that I wasn't aware of or wasn't conscious of, and he probably just took for granted in the way I played. But then when he actually ciphered it down and described them to me and made me understand why people do these things, and he was like, oh, I just thought it was certain positions that think like that, but he was like, no, everyone thinks like that, but these are the details regarding them positions. And like I said, it was so clear and then so refreshing to hear someone speak like that. And I never felt like he wasted any words with me, or when he was speaking to anyone, I just felt like, oh, what he's saying, listen to, because it's going to be important at some stage. And yeah, I'd never had that again. I'd never had someone show me as much new information as Glenn.
Yeah. But that's really interesting you say that, because we had Glenn's done an episode of the podcast for us. Yeah. And, you know, as a football fan, I'm not always necessarily that riveted by, you know, talk of tactics and so on and so forth. But the way Glenn tells you things, it's transfixing, you know. And I asked the question at the time, you know, why isn't he still in the game now? It seems a waste, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely obviously think there's a waste for his knowledge and his first, especially where the game's played now and thought of. I think players would benefit so much more from his approach, his training methods. Again, he played a formation I never played before. I think everyone just played 4-4-2 growing up, and then Glenn came to Wolves and we were playing 4-3-3 for these reasons, and we would then tweak it in game, and he had details for players that warranted who we were playing against, rather than just, this is the way we're going to play and this is the way we're going to play every week and hopefully you boys are better than theirs. It was like, no, this is the way they play. This is what I need you two to do. And I remember one game we played Ipswich. Darren Bent was playing. They were top of the league and they were flying, and they played 3-5-2. We played 4-3-3, and he said to our wingers, don't come back. Don't want you to come back. And I was like, what? Don't come back? Like, what are we going to do? He's like, just stay up. And their centre-halves won't want to come out wide. I think Unsworth was one in it. I can't remember. They were centre-halves basically. And then he said within so long, their wing-backs will be back. So then it'll be back five. And then I'll have more control in midfield. For half-time, we were 3-0 up. And they come out second half and they change formation. I was like, oh, that's the level that you recognise that I was so oblivious to.
Yeah. So look, let's go back to Roberto Mancini. I mean, he might have been difficult and he might have been aloof, but should he be regarded as the sort of father, if you like, of the Manchester City revolution, and also taking City out of the shadow of Manchester United?
Yeah, definitely one of them. I think there's a lot of people that have made a contribution, not more so than the owners and the chairman. But yeah, in regards to management, definitely needs to be held in high esteem and I think the City fans do, to be honest. I don't think that's ever in question. They have a lot of respect for him, a lot of love, because he done something no previous manager had done for 34 years or so. So he definitely gets the flowers he deserves.
Yeah. He must have liked you, You played a lot of games that season. I think it was only David Silva played more games.
Yeah, no, not just that season. I played a bit under him, but I think it was under default. I think he tried his hardest not to. Yeah, and it was funny because we laughed about it after, when he left. Obviously, Pellegrini came and brought in Martin Di Michelis, and that's when the lads had recognised that he tried to do it, and now Pellegrini was basically anyone but you. But what Mancini was fair with, if that person didn't perform, I would go back in. So that's why I kind of stayed in, because I was aware of that, and like I said, he was bringing in players that wanted to be the best centre half. And I'm like, you're not going to be the best centre half. You need to be Vinny's best partner. That was still, I understood that. And Gareth Barry understood that with Yaya and was like, if I'm Yaya's best partner, he plays rather than trying to be the best midfielder and stuff like that. So, yeah, I was aware of that. And he was fair in that aspect. But again, I just didn't get as much leeway as others. But it was what it was. Yeah. He played out.
Might sound a daft question again, but was Vinny the best centre-half you played with?
Definitely one of them, yeah. For me, the best centre-half Premier League was Rio, so I got to play with him, but for England, and that didn't go so well. But in terms of my partners, Vinny and Jags were, because you have to go off how you complement each other and your understanding, and me and Vinny didn't really need to speak, same as me and Jags, we just understood each other's roles and stuff like that. So yeah, Vinny definitely was one of them.
So what happened the next season when I think everybody thought that you'd go on and you'd defend the title? Well, and we know that's easier to say than to do. Well, what was it, 11 points behind Manchester United and lost in the final of the FA Cup to Wigan?
Yeah, again, disappointing. But we were relatively new to the success, so how to manage the expectation the following season was new. I think we all believed and hoped we could do it, but again, we probably underestimated the motivation from Man United. Obviously, they went and got Van Persie then. So, obviously, there's going to be a different level of motivation for them to be successful.
And did the manager find it more difficult to motivate you in the following season then?
Not motivate us, no. I think I would say he let his control overtake what was there. I think he was given more power, rightly so. He'd achieved something that no one had done, and then was given more control. And then there was changes made that we didn't, as players, think they were necessary. So we had a defensive coach. I think we'd gone from one of the best defensive records, if not the best, win the title, to then someone else coming in and wanting to play a different way. And it was like, as a team, and we're like, that wasn't broke, to be fair. That was probably the side of the game that Mancini had perfected in terms, and not just the defenders, but in regards to the way we structured and our responsibilities defended. And then that was changed, and then obviously players leave. And things do change, but listen, that squad had given a good 3 years of itself and dedicated, and not just achieved the Premier League. Like the FA Cup was very significant for me, and I think the club recognised that was a real turning point in where the club is now.
Yeah, but the FA Cup final against Wigan, though, you sat on the bench, weren't you?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, had you fallen out with him by then? Or?
Probably. I don't know, to be honest. That wasn't as surprising as the League Cup when I was on the bench. That hurt. That hurt a lot because the manager had made some crazy excuse. But in terms of the FA Cup, we were aware. What's strange about that is we were aware before the game he was leaving.
Really?
That was the rumours, should I say. That was the rumour. That
he was effectively sacked 2 days later, publicly anyway.
Yeah, but but to us he'd left.
Right.
The day after the game.
Well, okay.
So I think it was within in-house was after the game because we played Reading a few days after, and Brian Kidder took that. And I remember all his staff leaving the following day and coming, and it was emotional because as much as Mancini may not have been liked by everyone. His staff, some of his staff were really good. So that was an emotional thing. But yeah, we were aware that the rumours were coming that he was leaving at the end of the season. I think he'd upset higher profile players. I think that's what I mean by his power. I think he tried to control personalities in the squad, and they were more important to the club. And they were like, well, if he's staying, I'll look to leave. And then obviously then the change comes.
Who were those big personalities? I mean, it sounds like they were bigger than the manager, effectively.
I don't think I just think they were more important. Again, I think it was a case of, well, whilst you're winning, you can have that, like you can be on level par, but if we're buying, I would say Joe Hart was one, Vinny. I don't think he was trying to get rid of them in any way, but Sergio, I think he was trying to have too much control on their whatever their influence, and it was like, no, these are like prime world-class talent players at that time, so it's probably cheaper to get rid of their manager than it is to replace Vinny, Sergio and Joe Hart. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's come to and then on top of, you're not winning, so you're obviously not getting the best out of the players.
So would it be fair to say that when Roberto Mancini left, a lot of players were happy to see the back of him?
Oh yeah, more than what he's documented. Yeah, there wouldn't be many that was. As I said, we were playing for him, but we wanted to win for the club. As I said, we understood what the chairman and the owners had done to assemble that squad, so that was the driving force. And the perception from outside was that we were only coming there for money. That was what everyone was going to Man City for. We wasn't going to compete. It was just because of that, and that was a massive motivation for us to prove everyone wrong.
So in terms of his unpopularity then, obviously he's been successful. Was it just the fact that he was wanting to be too controlling in players' minds? Or?
Probably, yeah, but I didn't have that relationship with him, so he wasn't trying to control me because I wasn't of value to him. But in regards to that,
you weren't of value to him. You'd won a Premier League with his medal
to him, as valuable to him. But in regards to,
did he make that obvious that some players were more valuable than others?
Oh yeah, and I can't even give you examples. But if you're in a player group, you know what I mean. So me and Nadem still talk about that. It's funny. Like I remember I was injured, and what did he say? He said to someone that he doesn't want to select me because he thinks my calves are too small. I was just like, what? But tell me that. Like, if I'm not played for 3-4 weeks because you think that, I can work on that. That's something I could actually try to change. And it was something I'll be willing to do. But the fact that you haven't told me, then it's come out to someone else. And like me and Nadem laugh because his reason for not wanting to play Nadem was that he was too slow. But Nadem was like a semi-Olympic athlete. Like he was probably the quickest in the squad. So the doctor at the time said, you're going to need to pick another reason because that won't stick. Like you can pick any other reason, but you can't because he's too slow, because he's the quickest we got. So again, you just recognise that he's obviously trying to figure out a way who he wants in his squad. And I think I was lucky in terms of I'd not long come and the value of me at that time was a lot lower than what they bought. So they wasn't going to recoup the money. So I was staying,
right,
whether he liked it or not. And then by that time, I'd obviously got into the team and was performing.
You're going to go back to your career in a moment. Just got to, I mean, obviously Micah Richards there at the same time, a big mate of yours.
Big friend. Good friend.
Did he get on okay with Mancini? He seemed to sort of flourish under him, really.
Yeah, no, they got on. I think they respected what he could do. And again, he always wanted more from Micah, which was fair because Micah was a super talent. But they could have had a love-hate relationship, but were close, and there was a lot of respect. And again, I think all of us respected Mancini. I've worked with other managers that you don't get on with all the time, and I'm sure you've worked with people you don't get on with. But in regards to the respect level, there was never in question. It was never people were disobeying what he was asking because we just wanted to win, and we knew that even at the time when he joined, it was frustrated because I think we were second and we had a game in hand, and there was an opportunity for Mark Hughes to do something great, but in terms of when you come to the transition from what Mark Hughes had developed to we scoring loads of goals and not keeping many clean sheets, which was frustrating me, to all of a sudden we went to the total opposite. But then it allowed the more creative players to do that off that base, rather than think, well, we'll just score and then hopefully we can concede less. So in terms of the respect of what he did, that's never in question, and his contribution to what we achieved.
Were you surprised by the way that Micah said this week that he couldn't see the ball if it was more than 10 yards away? He was so short-sighted.
I know, Micah's really struggles to see. Like, that's never, like, when you see him on TV now and doing whatever he's doing, he's got these are not fashion statements. He's always had prescription glasses. Like, if I put them on, it's a headache. It's a real headache. Yeah, but no, Micah, his eyes are real bad. Real bad.
You may have heard that NordVPN is an essential cybersecurity tool which protects all your personal data whilst online. But did you know it could save you money? With NordVPN, you can take advantage of cheaper pricing in other countries by switching your location with one click. For example, if you're going on holiday, you can book flights, hotels and rental cars via another region and take advantage of the cheaper prices in that region. NordVPN is the same price as a cup of coffee a month, but with these savings, NordVPN essentially pays for itself. To grab our huge discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/FGpod. This code will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the episode description box. Look, let's go back a few years, shall we? Because obviously, you've been at Wolves, incredibly successful. They're incredibly successful at Everton as well. Then you almost had to force a move to Manchester City. How difficult was that?
Yeah, it was tough because, again, it leaves a bad taste in Evertonians' mouths. And since that, it's gone, and they appreciate my reasons for wanting to do it. But again, there's things that happen when transfers happen and that aren't allowed to be documented, or are documented that aren't true. Do you know what I mean? So in regards to me wanting to leave, yes, I did want to leave, and I felt I did it in the way that was respectful to the club, the chairman, Mr. Kemwright at the time, and the manager. But obviously, for them to let me go, it has to be documented in a slightly different way, due to it not being like, well, yeah, we're happy to take the money. But because I knew what was going on behind the scenes from both parties, it was just a waiting game for me, and I just kind of had to keep my mouth shut and let it happen.
Yeah. I think when you'd gone to City, one of your first games was in the win over Arsenal, wasn't it? And that was the Emmanuel Adebayor celebration game. You must have thought, what have I let myself in for?
No, again, it was funny because I think my last game for Everton was Arsenal. I think we'd lost 4-0. And I think I'd been blamed for every goal. And then looking back, I actually wasn't at fault for the goals. And then we played them. My first game, or one of my first games at home, was against Arsenal. And I was at fault for 2 of their goals, but we won 4-2. So it wasn't documented. But in regards to Addy, I think, again, unfairly treated by the fans, but maybe because he done well, because they were booing him. And it was pretty horrific what they were saying. And it's funny how that's viewed, because I think he served a ban for that. But then when you compare it to Thierry's goal on celebration against Spurs at Highbury, that's lauded. And he literally did the same thing, ran in front of the Spurs fans and slid on his knees and was lauded. But then Adebayor is banned. It was like, so the perception of individuals sometimes can overshadow what they do and lead to different punishments.
Yeah. Because during this period, you're part of the England setup as well. You mentioned Rio. I was interested when you said there that didn't go so well.
Yeah, no, I think we played 2 games, and I think we lost. So that's what I mean by that. Yeah. But in terms of how I view Rio as the best English and Premier League centre back we've had, I was excited for that because he's someone I looked up to, and I think my timing for England was pretty poor. I think when I first got into the squad, it was Sol Campbell and Rio, and then John Terry and Rio.
Right.
So it was a long waiting game. Yeah. three of the top 5-6 best centre halves England have had. I've had to kind of wait and bide my time, and then by that time I'm obviously past the opportunity. So yeah, it was unfortunate timing.
Those games with Rio, you said you lost, but did you take any blame for those defeats?
No, it wasn't just that. I just mean in fact of. Yeah. The way I view him as the best centre back, and then hopefully what I thought it could have been, It was never going to be long term because I was aware that John Terry and Rio Ferdinand were the partnership, and rightly so. They were playing for the two of the best teams and achieving unbelievable things. But yeah, again, England was different then. I was literally having this conversation with the taxi driver coming here, and I think it was viewed then by everyone. I think going into squads, we were aware who was going to play before the games. There wasn't much rotation, where I think now you can go to England believing you're going to get a cap, and that wasn't always the case with us. It was like, if there's an injury, then maybe. Yeah. But if there's not, then they'll play the 90 minutes in both of the games. And I think I went to 9 or 10 squads without getting any minutes in a row.
Wow.
So I don't think that happens now. So I think it's viewed different. I think the fans, the way the relationship with the fans, and I think Gareth deserves a lot of credit for that. But I also believe back in that generation, I don't believe Liverpool or Chelsea fans wanted Frank Lampard to be better than Steven Gerrard. If you're a Chelsea fan, I think Liverpool fans wanted Gerrard to be better than Lampard or whoever your player was for your club. I think you wanted them to be the best. Whereas now I think England fans want England to be the best. I think Spurs fans appreciate Saka and want him to do well for England, which I don't always think was the case back in the day.
Yeah, it was more tribal, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I think that was developed by the selection process, and everyone wasn't like recognised for England. It was just like who you knew. Like you talk about the golden generation, you could pick the 11 that probably played most of the games under Fabio Capello and all them, and Steve McLaren and stuff like that.
So who you knew? So we weren't necessarily playing the best 11.
Yeah, I don't think so. And again, it was different because the way England played was totally different to a lot of different teams. And again, it's probably documented that England always played 4-4-2. And if you overanalyze, it's probably United played 4-4-2, but probably played 4-2-4 because it was United. But Chelsea didn't play that way. So you're all of a sudden now you're asking players to play in different positions. Like for me, Joe Cole's probably the most unfortunate England player because he had to play, as well as he did play for England on the left wing. But if he's a number 10, like if he's allowed to play after striker, who knows what they could have achieved, you know what I mean? So I just think the circumstances warranted it to be too rigid for the players that were at the disposal.
Whose fault do you think that was?
I don't know. I don't know whose responsibility
individual managers or
yeah, I think accumulation of everything. I don't think to blame or to have success it's any one thing. There's obviously accumulation of things, but yeah, it was just always deemed very rigid. Even as a fan, as I'm talking about it now, I know I was part of it, but just thinking about it as a fan, like if we played a 3-5-2, which I think Glenn Hoddle was trying to navigate before he left that role, I think that would have been a lot of different outcomes for tournaments and games because I think our players, like in terms of positions and their specialities, if that is Sol Campbell, Rio and John Terry, Ashley Cole and Beckham maybe, or Gary Neville, and then the midfield three are Scholes, Lampard and Gerrard, and up front is Rooney and Owen or Heskey, and that team there, you're asking them players to perform in their best positions while you're playing 4-4-2. Someone's uncomfortable. Someone doesn't play in that role for their team, and now you're asking them to go and do it for England.
So as far as your club career went, I mean, leaving Manchester City was by no means the end of it. It was West Brom and Villa, and I think you went to Ike, didn't you? And Sunderland. And it was in some ways, after what had happened in 2012, was everything a bit of an anticlimax in some respects?
You could say that, but no, because as great as their moments were, I loved playing. I absolutely loved it. I loved training. So, and when you are playing, you don't realise that you don't kind of rest on your laurels or just sit back and reminisce on your achievements. It's like, what's the next thing? And even if there's nothing at that level, it's still something. You still want to achieve something. And like I said, my ambition was then to become a regular England player. So there's just different motivations. When I was growing up, I didn't think I'm going to win the Premier League. That wasn't a motivation. FA Cup maybe, because it's something that you can recognise as regardless of who you play for. But the Premier League only really become a goal when I go to Man City. Like not thinking about winning the Premier League in the greatest respect, playing for Everton, thinking about challenging and getting into Europe and then playing in Europe, and then all of a sudden you move and then your goals change. So after that, it was just a different motivation, but the motivation was still as important.
I do hope you're enjoying the show. I just want to tell you that you can follow us at Football's Greatest Pod on Instagram, TikTok and Facebook. And search for Football's Greatest Pod to find us on X. Look, Joleon, just to finish off, I'm going to ask you to name 10 great people or moments from your own career. We've probably had some of the answers already.
Not in order, just...
No, here we go. I've got the question. So, For instance, the first one is, who's your greatest manager or coach and why?
Well, manager, first team is Glenn Hoddle. And I've discussed that. But the most important influence was Terry Connor.
Really?
Yeah, Terry Connor was the biggest.
Why was that?
So he was my development coach, and it's kind of the reason why I want to do, or what I've done since post playing. His importance for me was to navigate and create habits in me that I maintain then throughout my career, and just again challenge me in a way that he thought was best, and get the best out of me, and like I said, just create a mentality and a resilience that I feel I had anyway, but just to kind of keep it at the forefront. So Terry Connor was the biggest influence.
And have you managed to take some of those lessons from Terry, into your relationships with the younger players now?
Yeah, in different ways, definitely, but challenge them and help them recognise, because players are motivated by different things. Yeah. And it was a funny story with TC, and I only learnt this when he did a podcast when I'd retired. So our first encounter was my first pre-season with the first team. And obviously back then it was canal runs and mile runs and all this. We're doing this run. We get halfway there, and I wasn't a great runner then. I was like 16, 17, and I got to the end or halfway, and I was sick, and he was behind me, but obviously I wasn't unaware. So I literally wiped a bit of the sick off my mouth, just ran back, didn't say anything, and just carried on training. And then he said from that point he knew he couldn't break me, so he kept on obviously probing me and challenging me. But I was already aware of that. I was already aware no one there could break me, because my love for the game was more than what they was going to say to me to do. So we used to clash. Oh my God, probably worse than Mario and Mancini. We used to clash.
Really?
A lot. But I know he was out of respect, and I was doing it probably to prove him wrong, and he was doing it to push me and drive me. Yeah. And it wasn't until I retired and I was like, TC, if you would have just told me that, our relationship would have been so much better, because I already knew you wasn't going to be able to break me, so we could have done it in a different way. But yeah, no, he was massive for me.
Brilliant. Who's your greatest teammate? Wow, there's a lot of selection there.
It's a tough one, that. For what reason? Because
for whatever reason you want. I'm sure that if Mike is listening to this, he's thinking, why hasn't he said me?
No, Mike is my friend. In terms of friend, Mike is my best friend for football. Obviously, I've had friends before football and got into it. But in terms of teammate, I'm going to say there's three. Yaya, best player.
Yeah.
And David Silva and Gareth Barry.
Okay.
Yeah. They were the most consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about Yaya. What made him so special? I mean, great athlete, obviously.
Everything. I don't think there's a player that had an attribute that he didn't have, whether it was dribbling, passing, goals, assists, defensive contribution. If he played well, we won. There was like Sergio, David, Carlos, unreal. And I remember David played a game at Anfield, was outrageous, and we lost 3-2. Yeah, that would never happen with Yaya. Like if Yaya scored or played, if Yaya was man of the match, we won the game. That was the only outcome to that game, and it was just, I'd never seen anything like it. Whatever the game needed, he would do. Or a pass 70 yards, or whether it needed to dribble and score, he literally could do anything in any circumstance. And yeah, he's a different level of ability. Okay,
greatest speed merchant, it says here,
someone I've played against.
Yeah.
Adama Traore.
Yeah.
Like fastest player I've ever come across. Yeah. I was at the end of my career and I was playing with him, Aston Villa, but I'd never experienced anything like that. And funny story was, I said to Micah, he's stupidly fast, and Micah had a race with him, and he said, yeah, I've never I've never felt someone do that to me. I was like, well, welcome to my world. That happens every other week.
Yeah.
But yeah, Adama Traore.
The most amazing physique of anybody in football as well. Incredible. Yeah. Greatest rollicking received, Joleon?
Glenn Hoddle.
Really?
Maybe cry. Yeah, he blamed me for a goal. That wasn't my fault. On reflection, after you look back and then he apologised for it. But yeah, that was probably the one because I was too emotional to actually retaliate. And brought tears to my eyes. I was that mad.
Was he tougher as a manager than people might perceive then?
Yeah, he could be, yeah. But again, because I had a relationship with him, it was allowed for him to do that because I knew when he recognised that it wasn't what he thought, he would then apologise. So that was fine. But yeah, that was probably the one that stood out.
Your greatest regret, if any?
Not many. I had an opportunity to leave Aston Villa and go to LA Galaxy. That was probably the only one. And it would have meant me kind of forcing a move from Aston Villa. They was like, well, you can go, but you're going to have to do it this way. And I was like, nah, even though that ended up sour, this wasn't something I was prepared to do.
You wouldn't have enjoyed LA. You're better off in Birmingham.
I don't know. This would have been a different, might be over Skype, this would have been.
Yeah. Greatest tough guy, I guess, who you've played with or against?
Nigel de Jong. Had a lot more ability than people probably recognise him for. But yeah, he could smash someone and fairly injured someone. Yeah,
he always looked like a tough guy to me. I'll tell you that. So,
loved it.
Greatest dressing room joker.
Dressing room joker. I'm putting myself in that category. But yeah, no, I would say, Lee Carsley. It's the driest sense of humour I've ever come across. But yeah, as a teammate, and even now, I worked with him in England, and still the same. And someone that has a relationship with players I've not seen. From any relationship with any group of players and any manager or coach, my whole career, I've never seen anything.
How does he manage that?
I don't know. I think it's down to his personality because he hasn't learnt that. Yeah. But in regard on a course, but in regards to who he is as a person, there's no one like him.
So, Joleon, when you're out there playing, we know that there are a lot of verbals go on sometimes. Who would give you the worst verbals?
I never really got involved in that. Like I said before, I knew it wasn't serious. So if you were serious, come, we'll wait till we get in there. So me and Phil Bardsley are close now, and it came off the back of me fouling him, getting up and him jumping up like he was going to fight. And I was like, you're not going to do anything. Like, when we get in the tunnel, we'll be friends. And he started laughing. And then since that day, we have been friends, you know what I mean? But in regards to like verbals, Drogba, but he wasn't aggressive. He was just in a way to try and distract you. He would always, Joel, how you going? What you up to? And I was like, no, Didier, no, I'm not here to make friends with you, because I knew he was doing it to distract me in order to get the best of me. And he tend to get the best of you anyway. But I was never one to kind of, even people that I knew, was never kind of into having communications with them or conversations. And Wazza would try and distract you as well, to be fair, but it was never for the reasons you may think. They don't really care. Yeah. They just want to get the best of you.
You were not a man for distracting.
No, they try not to be.
Greatest advice you've ever received?
Do one more. So TC used to say, like, when you're working out or you're doing something and you might forget, always do one more. And then, So I was like, yeah, that's probably the easiest one to recognise, which I still apply now. If I go to the gym and I get caught singing, just do one more rep.
Look, this is a tough one. You might not be able to tell us the greatest story you've never told before.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I've told this, but I'll say it anyway. When I was leaving Man City, I actually signed for Besiktas. Signed the paperwork.
Wow.
But you could sign a pre-contract, obviously overseas. So I'd signed it in the February. I might have the pictures on my phone of me in the kit. So the president I'd gone over to Istanbul, viewed it. I hadn't gone yet. They'd come over. We met at the hotel. We'd signed the contract. And then I said, okay, so that was the pre-contract. And then in the summer, you have to sign the official contract. So before that, I was going to Istanbul to view where to live and stuff like that. And I went there, and wasn't as glamorous as they made out it to be. And the kind of, my daughter she would have been 2 months old when I was leaving. It wasn't the lifestyle I wanted my children to have at that moment in time. And they was a very important figure. They always were, but now I was leaving City, that decision was like at the forefront. Like when I was leaving Wolves to go to Everton, it was just that was what I was doing. When I was leaving City, that's what I was doing. But when I'm leaving City, I had to consider them now a lot more. So I went over there, got the pictures in the shirt with the president, and then went there, decided against it because of what it was and what it looked like. But I also knew that if it come out, the president would get more stick, because obviously over in Europe, it's more political than it is here. So for him not to be able to get the signing over the line, he would receive more stick. So they kind of tore up the contract, and I ended up at West Brom.
Could have been in Istanbul or LA,
I think they
but
won
you
the
ended up
league,
in Birmingham.
I think they won the league the following year. So it could have had another title, but in regards to that, it was just decision based on it wasn't right.
I mean, just before we finish, and I always know this is an impossible question in some respects, but because it's so difficult to compare different generations. But your City team that won the title in 2012, you know what I'm going to ask? How would they have fared against the current Manchester City team?
I think we lose, but I think we lose down to managers.
Oh, really?
and this is not a slight on Mancini. I think Pep is the best coach.
Yeah.
I think he has a way and a style that isn't relying on anyone. But in terms of players, I think our players was equally as good.
So if you'd have had Pep in charge, roles were reversed,
maybe,
and the current team had Mancini,
I'm not saying
your team would have won.
I'm not saying that we would have, but I definitely believe our players are closer than the managers are, in the greatest respect. And I'm not saying who's best, but yeah, I think it would. If Pep's managing both teams, it's a good game.
Yeah. We'd love to see it. We never will, but we'd love to see it.
Maybe in the archives. Yeah. Golden generation.
Joleon, brilliant. Thanks very much, mate. That was great.
Thank you.
And we've reached the end of Football's Greatest. My thanks to Joleon Lescott for joining us today. Next time on Football's Greatest,
he's just got this calmness about him. You know, he's unflustered, really. He just knows what he's good at. Knows left foot, right foot, headers, all-round striker. The modern day centre forward that's going out of the game. Actually, a lot of teams are not playing with that type of player, but he's so good that he would have walked into Man City if they could have got him.
Please subscribe to the show on YouTube or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Football's Greatest is a folding pocket production with BBC Studios.